Luckily tonight, we're gonna give you a break. We got a breath of fresh air for you. The crowd surfing, line dancing, 2020 hopeful who wants to give every adult American $1,000 a month. Andrew Yang is here. Andrew Yang. Gang, gang. Oh, I'm so happy. So let's just get started, get right into it. Please welcome to the Van Jones Show, 2020 presidential candidate Andrew Yang in the house. I love it. My man, good to see you, sir. Beautiful.
Hello, everyone.
Gang, gang. Oh, man, grab a seat. Listen, man, it is an honor to see you. You have completely shaken up the conversation, bringing in all these new thoughts and ideas. Before we get to that, back to the nonsense for 1 second. This whistleblower controversy, how concerned are you? Lots of allegations, lots of questions. How concerned are you that the White House might be trying to stifle this whistleblower who's trying to tell us something about something that's happening in the administration?
No, I'm deeply concerned, but unfortunately, we've seen this before. And the 1,000th verification that Donald Trump is Donald Trump, in some ways, it's disappointing but not surprising. My job is to beat him at the ballot box in 2020 if he's still there.
Yeah. Well, listen, let's talk about that. How are you going to do it? You have such an unorthodox message, unorthodox style. How are you going to beat Donald Trump?
Well, I like math, and I'm one of 2 Democratic candidates in the field that 10% or more of Donald Trump voters said that they would support. So if I'm the Democratic nominee, we win the whole thing.
You and I spend time on the West Coast. The West Coast, a lot of stuff that you're talking about for the future is already here. The demographic changes are already there, but also the split between the rich and poor.
Completely.
That's kind of given you a little bit of a leg up in your policy proposals, universal basic income. Tell us a little bit more. It's such a big conversation in California, not a big conversation anyplace else. What is UBI and why will it work?
Well, if you've heard anything about me and my campaign, you've heard that I want to give every American adult $1,000 a month. And this seems far out or futuristic to some, but this is a deeply American idea.
Yeah, it sounds like a gimmick almost.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. But then Thomas Paine was for it, Martin Luther King championed it, and it is what he was fighting for when he was assassinated in 1968. And one state has had a dividend in place for almost 40 years, Alaska, which gives $1,000 to $2,000 in oil money to every Alaskan every single year. So what I'm saying to the American people is that what oil is to Alaska, technology is to the entire country. Because we're in an era where technology is going to do more and more of the work, and you have trillion-dollar tech companies like Amazon literally paying zero in taxes, and that's not going to work for the American people.
Yeah. So, look, I mean, part of the thing is I think people want, though, to work. And I think there's a fear that if you're just going to be passing out checks to people, that they're going to get the check, but they're still going to be alone, they're going to be isolated. What do you say to people who say people don't just want a check, they want a job?
I'm going to ask the people here in the studio audience, how many of you think that if you were getting $1,000 a month, you would work harder? Oh, look at that. Virtually everyone. How many of you think that you would just hit the sofa and never get up?
They're like, we're on television, we can't raise our hand.
But if everyone watching this reflects on that, no one's going to quit their job on $1,000 a month unless they're in a truly abusive or exploitative situation, at which point they probably should be able to leave.
Right.
So this is going to free us up to do more of the work that we want to do naturally. It's also going to recognize the kind of work that my wife does at home with our 2 boys every single day. One of our boys is autistic, and raising kids is the hardest, most challenging work there is, yet right now we value it at 0.
What about people who say that it's going to just, create a bunch of inflation? In other words, if everybody gets $1,000, isn't $1,000 like the new zero? Won't the inflation eat all that up?
A couple of data points on this. You all remember voting for the $4 trillion bailout of Wall Street during the crisis?
No.
No, none of us voted for it. Yet that's what happened, and there was not rampant inflation. If you look at our costs right now, inflation centered in 3 areas: housing, education, and healthcare. If we had $1,000 a month, most of our consumer products would stay the same price. And I have separate plans to try and curb any price rises in those 3 areas, which unfortunately are 3 areas that make us miserable: housing, education, and healthcare. But those areas are not getting more expensive because we have money in our pockets. Unfortunately, it's the opposite.
So how does your policy deal with that?
Well, I have separate plans to try and curb inflation in those 3 areas. But I'm happy to say this $12,000 a year that we'd all be entitled to, what would we spend it on in real life? Daycare, Little League signups, car repairs you've been putting off, the occasional night out, the money would just flow right back into our communities. We could create a trickle-up economy. And this would actually work, unlike the garbage that, the trickle-down theory was over this last number of years.
Yeah. Is this like, in your mind, like a panacea for everything? There are special problems that special groups have. Don't you need special solutions for, say, African Americans, for women, for other groups? Some people say Yang wants to do this instead of having a racial justice initiative or gender justice initiative. How do you respond to that?
I agree that we need much more than this foundation or floor. I see the freedom dividend as a base to build on. It's like the floor, $1,000 a month, where we can meet our basic needs, but that doesn't solve the problems. Then you have to start working on racial inequities, on gender inequities. We need to build a house on top of the foundation.
What's an Andrew Yang-style racial justice initiative on top of the freedom dividend?
On the criminal justice side, first I want to legalize marijuana nationwide. I want to go a step further. I want to pardon everyone who's in jail for a nonviolent marijuana-related offense on April 20th, 2021.
You got your first round of applause. We might have some nonviolent drug offenders in here.
I want to get rid of private prisons. It makes no sense to have prisons that have a profit motivation on the other side. I want to get rid of a punitive cash bail system that essentially throws people in jail for being poor.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a bunch of structural problems that we can fix, and I'm happy to say most Americans on both sides of the aisle now agree that our current criminal justice system is not working.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you have such a strong online presence, I mean, Yang Gang is all over the internet, all over, I mean, it's just nuts. So I decided I wanted to go online and get some questions. And so let's hear from somebody who actually is not here in the audience, but wants to get their question answered by you.
Hi, Andrew. I'm over 50. I know I don't look like it. And I'm not worried about a robot taking over my job. My question for you is, why should I and my fellow baby boomers support you?
Well, the problems that I'm trying to address are the problems that got Donald Trump elected, that we automated away millions of manufacturing jobs and that those changes are now going to affect other types of workers. It seems like he's not worried about that.
Right.
But what he may be worried about is that boomers are facing a retirement crisis where half of aging Americans will never actually be able to retire. And so we need to put in place, again, this foundation that will help Americans retire with dignity. Because we do not want to be a country where, frankly, people are working in convenience stores till the day they die in order to make ends meet. We're better than this. In my mind, Americans that have worked for decades have earned the right to retire with dignity.
How does it feel for you to be, I mean, you were not a well-known person a couple of years ago.
No, I don't know who Andrew Yang was.
Yeah.
Quite recently, I know.
Yeah. How does it feel?
It feels really great because we're waking up to the fact that there's nothing stopping a majority of citizens of a democracy from improving our own lives. Actually, that's the only way it's going to happen. If you go to yang2020.com, you'll see I have over 150 policies trying to solve all sorts of problems. And a lot of them we can get done very, very quickly after I'm president.
Well, do you think people are taking you seriously enough? I mean, part of the thing is that you're such an unlikely candidate that people, they're not shooting at you. Even Donald Trump doesn't have a bad name for you yet. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, Donald Trump hasn't messed with me online because he knows I'm actually better at the internet than he is. And though I started out an unlikely candidate, I'm now sixth in national polls. I've made every debate.
Yeah.
And we are one of only a couple of campaigns that has been consistently growing. Democrats around the country are trying to figure out who's the best candidate to take on Donald Trump.
Right.
When they realize that I'm peeling off hundreds of thousands of disaffected Trump voters, as well as independents and libertarians, in addition to Democrats, they're going to realize that I am the best candidate to beat Donald Trump in 2020.
Yeah. Help me understand a couple of things here. First of all, on the one hand, you are growing, but online, a lot of your people feel like there's a conspiracy to keep you invisible. I deleted one tweet with your name in it, and I got just killed. Like, why are you trying to erase it? So,
Let Yang speak.
Yeah. Do you feel like there's a reluctance on the part of the media to give you your opportunities? Do you feel like you're being made invisible in any way?
Big picture, the media's treatment of us, I think, has been colored by the fact that they just didn't know what to do with me. And I'm not going to knock them for that. But now it's indisputable that I'm one of the top 6 or 7 candidates in the race, that we're going to be here the whole time, that we have the resources to play all the way through 2020. But I'm happy to say now the media has woken up to that fact.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, though. We already have a business dude in the White House.
Please don't compare me to that guy.
I'm just saying. Somebody's got to say it to you, man. You're a business dude. You got no political experience, and you're coming in making big promises. Why shouldn't we be terrified? I got PTSD from the last one.
So Donald Trump gives entrepreneurs a bad name. And real entrepreneurs like myself regard him as a marketing charlatan and a fraud and not a real builder. He certainly doesn't represent all of us. And also, I'm the last person who would say I'm going to run government like a business, because that's nonsense. They're very different things. And running the government is much more similar to what I did running a national nonprofit that I'd founded, where you have to have a vision and then activate energy and excitement around that vision and try and build consensus. That's much, much more analogous to what I will do as president.
Oh, that's great. Listen, we got a lot more to talk about with you when we get back. First of all, we could be talking to the first Asian American president ever. Now, what would that mean for the country? Also, he actually wants to sit down and talk to the fired Saturday Night Live comedian who made disparaging remarks about him and Asian people. Why does he want to do that? All that and more when we get back. I've been working the crowd. I am back with 2020 Democratic presidential candidate Andrew Yang in the house. Jeez. Hey, listen, I want to talk with you very, very seriously. There's this guy, Shane Gillis, comedian, Saturday Night Live, got caught on a podcast saying disparaging things about Asian Americans, saying disparaging things about you personally. Everybody says, this guy should be fired, this guy should be canceled. And you did it.
Well, the first reaction I had was obviously hostility, confusion, anger. And so I did what came naturally to me, which was I sat down with my wife and actually watched some of Shane's comedy just to try and get a sense as to who he was and where he was coming from. And after I watched some of his work for, let's say, 45 minutes or so, I looked at my wife and we talked about it. And then we both thought that he was not evil or malignant or really hateful and actually advocating, for any kind of racist ideology, that he struck me as a still figuring it out comedian from central Pennsylvania who'd told some terrible and offensive jokes.
Right.
And that to me did not rise to a level where he should lose his job.
Wow.
And so and as someone who was personally actually called out, then I thought, well, if anyone should be offended, it's me.
Right.
And if I don't think he should lose his job, then I should probably say something to that effect, because maybe it would make a difference.
Well, maybe you haven't lived in the United States for the last year or two, but that's not normal. Well, first of all, he did get fired, despite your speaking up for him. But we live in a time now where we have what we call, as you know, cancel culture, man. And if you do something wrong, you're supposed to be out of here. And it could have been 5 minutes ago, or it could have been 20, 30 years ago. Do you have a view that we maybe have gone too far in the direction of a lack of grace or a lack of forgiveness?
Well, my campaign slogan is humanity first.
Yeah.
I mean, we're all people, we're all human, we all make mistakes, we're all fallible. And I'm new to politics, but I certainly would hate to be judged by something I did 25 years ago.
Yeah.
Like you bust out some statement. Happily, no one was paying any attention to anything. But I think that our standards have become unfair, and we become unduly vindictive and punitive. And one of the things that we benefit from is remembering that we're all human and we can forgive. One of the things a friend said to me is that, let's say someone makes a mistake and then we turn on them and say, hey, you should be fired from your job, you should be canceled. And then what happens 2 months later, we move on, but that person still doesn't have a job, or that person's life has still been changed irrevocably. So to me, those things don't necessarily balance out.
But what do you think about Justin Trudeau? Blackface, all that kind of stuff. He came out, he apologized. Do you hold him to a higher standard because he's an elected official? Or do you have that same humanity first grace across the board? How do you think about that stuff?
I mean, that's a tough one, in part because I'm not black, and so him wearing blackface, I would actually refer to as someone who has more direct experience with that form of racism. He also was an elected official.
I'll tell you, people might get mad at me. To me, if you did something that's 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and it was stupid, if you apologize, then I don't care. In other words, if you care about it, then I don't care. But if you don't care about it, now I care, right? Because if you're saying, well, I did it and screw you and I can do what I want to do, now I'm concerned. But I do think that people should be able to apologize. Another issue has to do with how you break in with the African-American community. And I got a question online for you about that. I want you to answer.
I think your policy platform is so transformative, yet so many people haven't heard about you yet. So I just want to hear, what are your next steps to make sure you secure that black vote and we win this nomination? Yang gang.
Yeah, it's coming on platforms like this show. I just need to do the hard work to introduce myself to as many voters as possible, particularly people in communities like perhaps the black community that don't know that much about me. Mm-hmm. But if you dig in, you find that my vision for the country is inclusive and will be transformative to our way of life.
Yeah. You know, when Obama came in, his first black president, I was raising two black boys. It was unbelievably powerful for them.
Yeah.
Have you thought about the fact you would be our first Asian American president? What do you think the impact on the country is for that ceiling to get broken through?
I think that my becoming president would be another transformative moment for the country. Mm-hmm. Certainly, growing up as the son of immigrants myself, I never imagined I would be in this seat or in this race. But now that I'm here, I believe that I can help move our country forward. And to the extent that makes Asian Americans very happy and proud, that makes me very happy and proud. Yeah.
You're raising two boys. You mentioned that one is on the spectrum with regard to autism. What have you learned from him? What has he taught you in your journey together?
I learned so much from my son. And when he was a little bit younger, we didn't realize he was autistic, and we were first-time parents, and so you're trying to figure out, what's normal. Like, is this normal? I have to say, for me, and this is probably true for many parents, like, you relive your own childhood a little bit.
Absolutely.
And so the fact that he's autistic, there are some of the things he's experiencing that actually just bring me back and make me think, like, wow. Now, I think that I had some of the same approaches to the world that he does, and I'm really eager to help him thrive and prosper.
Yeah, it's being a parent and kind of being in a political environment like we're in. We really need folks like you. I just wanted to say, like, your character, your integrity, you're just a beautiful human being, and I really appreciate who you are. I really do. Class act all the way.
Thank you.
Andrew Yang.
Thanks, guys.
Now listen, you're gonna be hearing a lot more from this guy, I guarantee it.
A special shout out goes to our God tier producers over on Patreon. Manuel Carrillo III, Bradley Davis, Justin Zhu, Matthew Gerard, Ahsoka Nelson, Joshua Hare, Alexandra Dembski, and Zach Sargent. If you would like to hear your name at the end of every video, then become a God tier producer of the show today.
Yang Gang 2020. Yang Gang 2020. Yang Gang 2020. Yang Gang. Yeah. Yang Gang 2020. Yang Gang 2020. Yang Gang 2020. Yang Gang.